With 2 worlds, too, yeah. So you can, like, have all the back and forth that you need to, like, fill in the holes with things. You got the technological side that's ahead. You got kind of the multiple race side, like, feudal era level, kind of. Like, you know, maybe just going into the industrial age. But not very technological at all. And it also makes James's knowledge of the world less world-changing, because no matter what information he has, Tellus is gonna be way more advanced, right? So maybe he can come up with the ideas to do stuff, but at the end of the day, they have the technology that way surpasses his actual ability. So you don't have to have it be like, oh, now I have to build and facilitate the entirety of it. I just have to have the ideas of having that in-between primitiveness where people would just assume things at a high level of technology, like you would assume things in normal society, right? Yup, and when they get the maps of the 3 worlds, who knows what's gonna happen then, right? They'll have a full picture of what's actually going on, which I'm sure will be very interesting. And being able to, like, pick out, like, you know, like I said, if it falls into the root of communication and spying, that kind of technology is literally like nuclear weapons to that society. So now we do, of course, Eye of the World. I think all allied nations to Verona's nation will have unexplained meteor impacts that all miraculously reveal magicite deposits. I don't know, man. That's a real coincidence. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? But yeah, that is kind of weird if you look at where they fell. You know, I mean, but none happened here. Like, you know, you'd think if you're saying and implying what I think you're saying and implying, wouldn't we like reveal that shit in our own backyard? Why the hell would we give it to anyone else? Especially publicly like that. That seems a little bit off the rails, don't you think? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Doing the obviously stupid thing to make it so people don't believe that it was you that did it, because it would be so dumb for you to do something like that. And they're like, exactly. Exactly. That's what happens. Alright, so I guess we could watch the Iliad Part 3, right? Before we do Eye of the World, actually. And eventually, when it's discovered that it was on purpose, it will be a service that the other nations would feel like they owed Verona's nation. Hasn't happened yet, but I can see it coming maybe. Ah.
Myths are not stories that are untrue. Rather, they are tales that don't fit neatly into the historical record, which serve as a foundation to a culture. Dawn breaks on high-walled Troy. Waves gently lap the shores as gulls cry out to the morning sun. But against this tranquil backdrop, the Achaeans ready for war, because Agamemnon has been sent a favorable dream from Zeus himself, stating that the gods are with him, so victory is assured. Or so it would seem. The time has finally come. After 9 long years, the Trojans will meet the Achaeans in battle once again. The armies advance, and as they draw close, Paris steps forward from the Trojan ranks, frightfully adorned in a leopard skin, with a curved bow on his shoulders and 2 bronze-tipped spears. He then dares any of the Achaeans to meet him in single combat. Menelaus sees this and immediately accepts the challenge, eager to finally end things and enact vengeance on his rival. But then Paris is so intimidated that he falls back into the Trojan ranks. Turns out spending 10 years hiding out at home isn't the best practice for battle after all. But while the Achaeans laugh and mock Paris, his brother Hector, commander of the Trojan forces, rebukes him.
Are you nothing but good looks? Or is there a warrior in there? Where is the man who was willing to risk everything to get what he wanted?
I'm now curious just how dark James's dark side is going to be if that douche shows up. There might just be some missing finger and toenails as well as missing teeth. Then instead of killing him, maybe make him the first Varese slave. True.
You stole that man's wife. Go and learn what kind of man he is.
Paris is ashamed. His brother is right. He will fight for Helen. He agrees to the duel, and Agamemnon and Hector call a truce to determine the conditions. Menelaus and Paris alone will fight, and the victor will win Helen. But no matter who wins, the Achaeans and the Trojans will declare peace, and the Achaeans will sail home. The duel begins. Paris strikes first, throwing a spear, but it lodges in Menelaus' shield. Menelaus then prays, Lord Zeus, grant me vengeance on the man who has wronged me. Let me break him beneath my hands, so that even generations to come will shudder to think of betraying another man. The prayer complete, he throws his spear, and it cuts through Paris' side, injuring him but sparing his life. Menelaus then draws his sword and moves in to strike the finishing blow, bringing his blade down upon Paris' helmet. But the armor holds, and Menelaus' weapon shatters on impact. Frustrated, he grabs Paris' helmet and drags him toward the Achaean line, while Paris chokes and struggles. And then the Achaeans descend on him until he's barely conscious. Finally, Menelaus rushes forward, ready to strike the killing blow. All seems lost for Paris. But as fate would have it, Zeus was not the only god watching. Seeing that her favorite mortal was in peril, Aphrodite descends from Olympus and whisks Paris away to the safety of his own home in a thick cloud of perfumed mist. When the mortals realized what has happened, Agamemnon steps in front of his army and declares that, since Menelaus was unquestionably the winner, Helen should be returned to him at once. And while the Achaeans cheer, the gods had some deliberating to do. They call an emergency meeting on Mount Olympus. Exhausted from the years of conflict, Zeus agrees with Agamemnon. Menelaus won the duel, so the 9-year war can end. Sounds good, right? Right, guys? But Hera and Athena don't want to hear it, and Hera in particular is not okay with this plan. She hates Paris, she hates Troy, and she resents that her husband has not taken her side. She will not accept a truce. And so, with no other choice, Zeus sends Athena, goddess of war, back down to incite the Achaeans and Trojans once more. Although both sides are still under truce, Athena appears before one of the Trojan leaders and promises him glory if he can take down Menelaus. Foolishly, he draws his bow and fires at the Achaean king, while then Athena cruelly tilts the arrow so that it only wounds him. Shocked at the violation of the truce, Agamemnon immediately orders the troops to prepare to fight. The
Gotta love
armies
it.
clash violently, and the war begins again in a staggering amount of bloodshed. The gods then choose their champions. Some watch from afar, while others disguise themselves as mortals and wade into the fray. And Athena uses this opportunity to play a little prank. She appears before an Achaean warrior and grants him the ability to distinguish gods from men. But she warns him not to fight any of them except Aphrodite. Then when Aphrodite sees another of her favored mortals about to be killed, she intervenes again. But now being able to see her and having a different goddess on his side, the blessed warrior strikes Aphrodite in the hand, wounding her. With tears streaming down her face, she flees back to Olympus, and Zeus says it serves her right. She's the goddess of love after all, and has no place on the battlefield. Sulking, and recognizing that her sister Athena has won, Aphrodite stays on Olympus. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Ares is getting ready to rumble. With the literal personification of war on their side, the Trojans feel their hearts surge with courage, and their bodies fill with a new strength. Hector's forces rally, and the brutal power of Ares helps them push the Achaeans all the way back to their camp. But now Hera and Athena are upset that their brother is tilting the battle so far in their enemy's favor. So with Zeus's blessing, they fly to the aid of the Achaeans. And as the goddesses empower them, one Achaean is able to drive a spear through Ares' belly. With a furious cry of pain and rage, it is now Ares who retreats back to Olympus. Their brother now off the field. Hera and Athena attempt to swing the battle back to the Achaeans.
Fucking women.
That is, of course, until Zeus.
This all started because the fucking Aphrodite made them fall in love in the first place.
Ridiculous. He commands them to leave the
What a joke.
This has all gone on too long. So now, with the gods off the field, or are they? The Trojans continue to press their advantage. When night comes, they camp outside of their walls to prevent the Achaeans from sailing back home in the cover of darkness and to hold on to their advantage for the next morning's fighting. The Achaeans are utterly demoralized. This was supposed to be their day, but now they're on the brink of defeat with nowhere to run. There's only one person who can help them out of this, and he's been sulking in his tent this whole time. But luckily for
Aphrodite was a beautiful yet cruel being. True.
was about to get angry.
The hotter they are, the
And if you
crazier
were
they are,
You
Sean.
weren't going to like him when he was angry. Legendary thanks to Ahmed Ziad Turk, Alicia Bramble, Casey Mustia, Dominic
Ooh,
Valenciano,
we already
Gunnar
gave it a
Clovis,
like.
Kyle Murgatroyd, and Oriel's One for helping to...
Yeah, so go give that guy a view, give him a like, give him a sub. Seems pretty decent stuff. You like mythology, go check that out. Alright, Marion has an appointment at 9 in the morning, so I better get off and blast everyone. Alright, see you, Sean. Have a great night, good sir. Take care. Always good having you, brother. We'll see you again. Alright, we got Eye of the World now. Fuck. Three, two, one, toe. All right, chapter 27. Shelter from the storm. Perrin fretted over the days spent with the Tuathon traveling south and east in a leisurely fashion. Traveling people saw no need to hurry. They never did. The colorful wagons did not roll out of a morning until the sun was well above the horizon. They stopped as early as mid-afternoon if they came across a congenial spot. Dogs trotted easily alongside the wagons, and often the children did too. They had no difficulty in keeping up. Any suggestion they might go further or more quickly was met with laughter, or perhaps, but would you make the poor horses work so hard? He was surprised that Elias did not share his feelings. Elias would not ride on the wagons. He preferred to walk, sometimes loping around at the head of the column, but he never suggested leaving or pressing on ahead. The strange bearded man in his strange skin clothes was so different from the gentle Tuathan that he stood out wherever he went among the wagons. Even from across the camp, there was no mistaking Elias for one of the people. And not just because of the clothes. Elias moved with the lazy grace of a wolf, only emphasized by his skin and his fur hat, radiating danger and as naturally as a fire radiated heat. Contrast with the traveling people was sharp. Young and old, people were joyful on their feet. There was no danger in their grace, only delight. Their children darted about, filled with the pure zest of moving. Of course, but among the Tuathan, greybeards and grandmothers, too, still stepped lightly, their walk a stately dance, no less exuberant for its dignity. All the people seemed on the point of dancing, even when standing still, even during the rare times when there was no music in the camp. Fiddles and flutes, dulcimers and zithers and drums spun harmony and counterpoint after the wagons at almost an hour. Around the wagons at almost any hour. In camp or on the move. Joyous songs, merry songs, laughing songs, sad songs. If someone was awake in the camp, there was usually music. Elias met friendly nods and smiles at every wagon he passed, and a cheerful word at any fire where he passed. This must be the face of people always showed to outsiders. Open, smiling faces, but Perrin had learned that hidden beneath the surface was a wariness of a half-tamed deer. Something deep laying behind the smiles directed at Edmund's fielders, something that wondered if they were safe, something that faded only slightly over the days. With Elias, the wariness was strong, like deep summer heat, shimmering in the air, and it did not fade. When he was not looking, they watched him openly, as if unsure that he was going to do what he was going to do. When he walked across the camp, feet already ready for dancing, seemed ready for flight as well. Elias was certainly no more comfortable with their way of the leaf than they were with him. His mouth wore a permanent twist when he was around the Tuathan.
Imagine picking up a trans woman and saying, I heard that you are an employee at the medieval times, and they say, why is that? And you tell them, cause I know you are a professional sword fighter.
Welcome, Mike Cheese Harry. How are you today, good sir? Thank you for your input. I absolutely love it. It is very true. It's not quite condensation, and clearly not contempt, but looked as though he would rather be elsewhere than where he was, almost anywhere else. Yet whenever Perrin brought up leaving, Elias made smooth noises about resting just a few more days. Good, bro, how about you? Oh, not too bad. We're just chilling out, reading more Eye of the World. Yeah. We were doing a bunch of stories earlier. I'm still working on a short for release on Friday for the new Magellan story. But I still need to also do... We did the entire outline for the story 5, so I've got it completely outlined and ready to go. I just have to actually write the story, which should take like an hour and a half. And then, you know, the 4-hour process of turning that into a video. So we'll have story 4 for Friday, story 5 for Saturday, and then Sunday will be the new story release. Either that or we'll wait till next week. I haven't quite decided yet. Depends on how far we get on the stories, right? But I will say, if at any point in time you guys want to submit an origin story, like the very first story that I read, and then I can make a series off of it, if you guys are interested in that. Whether you want to give me an idea for it, it just has to revolve around something to do with technology and horror. Usually something to do with, like, body horror. But technically it could be anything. Any kind of horror story you guys want. And then I'll feature it on the channel. You had hard days before you met me, Elias said, the third or fourth time he asked. And you'll have harder still ahead, with Trollocs and half-men after you. The ace to die for friends. Grinned around a mouthful of Illa's dried apple pie. Perrin still found his yellow-eyed gaze disconcerting, even when he was smiling. Perhaps even more when he was smiling. Smiles seldom touched those hunters' eyes. Elias lounged beside Rain's fire, as usual, refusing to sit on the logs drawn up for the purpose. Don't be in such a bloody hurry to put yourself in Aes Sedai hands. What if the Fades find us? Just to keep them from it if we just sit here waiting. 3 wolves can't hold them off, and the traveling people won't be any help. They won't even defend themselves. Trollocs will butcher them, and it will be our fault. Anyway, we have to leave them sooner or later. It might as well be sooner. Something tells me to wait just a few days. Something. Relax, lad. Take life as it comes. Run when you have to. Fight when you must. Rest when you can. What are you talking about, something? Have some of this pie. Eula doesn't like me, but she surely feeds me well when I visit. Always good food in the people's camps. What? Something, Perrin demanded. If you know something you aren't telling the rest of us. Elias frowned at the piece of pie in his hand, then set it down and dusted his hands together. Something, he said finally, with a shrug of his shoulders, as if he did not understand it completely himself. Something tells me it's important to wait. A few more days. I don't get feelings like this often, but when I do, I've learned to trust them. They've saved my life in the past. This time it's different, somehow. But it's important, that's clear. You want to run on? Then run on, not me. That was all he would say, no matter how many times Perrin asked. He lay about, talking with Rain, eating, napping, with his hat over his eyes, and refusing to discuss leaving. Sometimes told him to wait. Something told him to wait. Something told him it was important. He would know when it was time to go. Have some pie, lad. Don't lather yourself. Try some of this stew. Relax. Perrin could not make himself relax. At night, he wandered among the rainbow wagons, worrying as much because no one else seemed to see anything to worry about as for any other reason. The Tuathan sang and danced, cooked and ate around their campfires, fruits and nuts, berries and vegetables. They ate no meat, and went about myriad domestic chores as if they had not a care in the world. Children ran and played everywhere, hide and seek among the wagons, climbing in the trees around the camp, laughing and rolling on the ground with the dogs, not a care in the world for anyone. Watching them, he itched to get away. Go, before we bring the hunters down on them. They took us in, and we repay their kindness by endangering them. At least they have reason to be light-hearted. Nothing is hunting them. But the rest of us... It was hard to get a word with Egwene. Either she was talking with Elia, their heads together in a way that said no men were welcome, or she was dancing with Aram, swinging around and around, and the flutes and fiddles and drums and tunes. To tunes the Tuathan had gathered from all over the world, or to the sharp, trilling songs of the traveling people themselves. Sharp, whether they were quick or slow. They were many songs. Some he recognized from home, though often under different names than they were called in the 2 rivers. 3 girls in a meadow, for instance, the tinkerers named Pretty Maids Dancing. And they said the wind from the north was called Hard Rain Falling, some lands, and Baron's Retreat in others. When he asked, not thinking, for the tinker has my pots, they fell over themselves laughing. They knew it, but as toss the feather. You can understand waiting to dance to the people's songs. Back in Edmund's Field, no one considered him more than an adequate dancer. But these songs tugged at his feet, and he thought he had never danced so long or so hard or so well in his life. Hypnotic, they made his blood pound in rhythm to the drums. It was the second evening of when, for the first time, Perrin saw women dance to some of the slow songs. The fires burned low, and the night hung close around the wagons, and fingers tapped a slow rhythm on the drums. First one drum, then another, until every drum in the camp kept the same low, insistent beat. They're silent, except for the drums. A girl in a red dress swayed into the light, loosening her shawl. Strings of beads hung in her hair, and she had kicked off her shoes. Do you think the vampire video could start getting views at night even though I post it in the morning? Unfortunately, Callie, usually it'll get its max number of views, like 90% of its views in the first 3 hours. And then the algorithm will kill it. So honestly, what I do is I delete it. And I'd re-upload it and just fix the, like, zoom in a little bit and crop out the little white piece at the top. And then have it released for, like, an hour and a half from now. And try that. Got 3 views in like a minute just now. Well, that answers your question, Callie. That's just me, you know. I'll go to 3 views, and then in the next week and a half, I'll go from 3 views to 5 views. And you're at what, 9 views now? So that would make it 12 views? Share it on Reddit under like a boyfriend ASMR. They have to have that. Find a Discord. Wait, last time you saw it was at 9? I'm pretty sure it was at 9. It's at 16. Okay, well there you go. That's decent. I'd just say maybe you might be able to get over 100 views if you re-upload it, but who knows, right? One trick you can try is refreshing the thumbnail. Like if you change the thumbnail, that sometimes works. Or if you change the title, that also works. So there's some things you can do, but the most effective is waiting and trying another video at different times. Even though my original recommendation was to delete it and re-upload it. But that would only be like immediate response versus waited over time. And you kind of want to wait over time. Which is kind of important. A flute began to melody, wailing softly, and the girl danced. Outstretched arms spread, her shawl behind her, her hips undulating as her bare feet shuffled to the beat of the drums. The girl's dark eyes fastened on Perrin, and her smile was as low as her dance. She turned in small circles, smiling over her shoulder at him, swallowed hard. Heat in his face was not from the fire. A second girl joined the first, the fringe on their shawls shaking in time to the drums and the slow rotation of their hips. They smiled at him, and he cleared his throat hoarsely. He was afraid to look around. His face was as red as a beet. And anyone who was not watching the dancers was probably laughing at him, as he was sure of it. As casually as he could manage, he slid off the log as if he were just getting comfortable. But he carefully ended up looking away from the fire, away from the dancers. There's nothing like that in Edmonds Field. Dancing with girls on the green on the feast day did not even come close. For once he wished that the wind would pick up to cool him off. Girls danced into his field of view again, only now they were 3. One gave him a sly wink. His eyes darted frantically. Light, he thought. What do I do now? What do I do, Rand? He knows about girls. Dancing girls laughed softly, beads clicking as they tossed their long hair on their shoulders, and he thought his face would burn up. Then the slightly older woman joined the girls to show them how it was done. With a groan, he gave up altogether and shut his eyes. Even behind his eyelids, their laughter taunted and tickled. Even behind his eyelids, he could still see them. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and he wished for the wind. According to Rand, the girls did not dance that dance often, and the woman rarely did. According to Elias, it was thanks to Perrin's blushes that they did so every night thereafter. "I thank you," Elias told him, his tone somber and solemn. "It's different with you young fellows, but at my age it takes more than a fire to warm my bones." Perrin scowled. There was something about Elias's back as he walked away that said, even if nothing showed, he was laughing inside. Perrin soon learned better than to look away from the dancing women and girls, though the winks and smiles still made him wish he could. One would have been all right, maybe, but 5 or 6 with everyone watching, he never did entirely conquer his blushes. Then Egwene began learning the dance. 2 of the girls who had danced that first night taught her, clapping the rhythm while she repeated the shuffling steps with a borrowed shawl swaying behind her. Perrin started to say something, then decided it was wiser not to crack his teeth. When the girls added the hip movements, Egwene started laughing. And the 3 girls fell giggling into one another's arms, but Egwene persevered with her eyes glistening and bright spots of color in her cheeks. Aram watched her dancing with a hot, hungry gaze. Handsome young Tuathan had given her a string of blue beads that she wore all the time. Worried frowns now replaced the smiles Ilya had worn when she first noticed her grandson's interest in Egwene. Perrin resolved to keep a close eye on the young Master Aram. Once he managed to get Egwene alone beside a wagon painted in green and yellow. "Enjoying yourself, aren't you?" he said. "Why shouldn't I?" She fingered the blue beads around her neck, smiling at them. "We don't all have to work at being miserable, the way you do. Don't we deserve a little chance to enjoy ourselves?" Aram stood not far off. He never got far from Egwene, with his arms folded across his chest, a little smile on his face, half smuggins and half challenge. Perrin lowered his voice. "Thought you wanted to get to Tar Valon. You won't learn to be an Aes Sedai here." Egwene tossed her head. "And I thought you don't like me wanting to become an Aes Sedai," she said, too sweetly. "Blood and ashes. Do you believe we're safe here? Are these people safe with us here? A Fade could find us any time." Her hand trembled on the beads. She lowered it and took a deep breath. "Yo, yes, it's true. Callie, it's so true. I believe. I believe in you. You have the power. How much more do you need, Callie? Because I can give you more. Trust me. We can scrape off the edges. Get into the grime of it. Whatever's going to happen will happen whether we leave today or next week. That's what I believe now. Enjoy yourself, Perrin. It might be the last chance we have." She brushed his cheek sadly with her fingers. Then Aram held out his hand to her, and she darted to him, already laughing again. As they ran away to where fiddles sang, Aram flushed, a triumphant grin over his shoulder at Perrin, as if to say, "She is not yours, but she will be mine." They were all falling too much under the spell of the people, Perrin thought. Elias is right. They don't have to try to convert you to the way of the leaf. It seeps into you. Ilya had taken one look at him, huddling out in the wind, then produced a thick wool cloak out of her wagon, a dark green cloak. He was pleased to see, after all the reds and yellows. As he swung it around his shoulders, thinking what a wonder it was that the cloak was big enough for him, Ilya said primly. "Oh shit! Coffee Quills!
To the stream.
Holy shit, yo, welcome everyone! How's it going? More coffee! True! Welcome, Dragon Magpie. We are currently reading Eye of the World, Book 1 of the Sword of Truth. We are on chapter 27, page 442, just over halfway through the book. This is what we have left. Hope your stream was a fantastic, Coffee. You got all of the things that you needed to do done, all the progress done. More coffee! True! Ooh, pages. Thank you for following Sexuality Attracted to Pants. Sexually Attracted to Pants, hell yeah! More coffee! Agreed. I sadly can't drink coffee, but, you know, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
700 septillion.
True, Smokey. True.
Thank you for following Zero Sexual My Attracted Top Hands and Zero. I hope you are enjoying the stream less than 4 less.
Epic name, by the way. Absolutely love it. That's amazing. Thank you for the follow. I really, really appreciate it. How are you guys? Are you writers? Are you readers? Are you purveyors of imagination and creativity? Are you explorers of the world of words? Welcome, welcome. I am Intoxication, and here we do beta reading for whoever wishes me to read any of their stories. No qualifications, no nothing required. Simple analysis of your story, as well as tips and tricks to improve your writing skills. And today we're doing character arcs. We also do a lot of just reading in general, and we're currently writing a new story today in an entirely new series for Morgellons disease, if you know what Morgellons is, because we just started, if anyone is interested. We actually just debuted last week our new YouTube channel for biotech horror stories. So if anyone's interested and they want to go check that out, feel free to, you know, give it a subscribe, give it a like, give it a view, you know, see what's up. These are our current 3 that we have, and then we have a couple of shorts, which are just, the first 3 here are letters pertaining to each one of the stories, and then the 4th one is pertaining to the next series that we're going to be releasing on Friday. And then we have 2 stories to premiere, the 4th and 5th story of Lisa Lives Forever, as well as the first story of Morgellons disease. Whoops, we don't need that. But yeah, so if anyone has any work in progress that they would like me to read, feel free, as well as if you want to, feel free to join the Discord. And if you want me to read anything, you can post it in the... I moved it somewhere, so now I can never find it again. Stream beta readings. And then there's beta readings if you want to post your stuff for anyone who's actually looking for beta reading among the group. And then you can go into the beta reading channel and have your own little private conversation, or you can DM each other, do whatever you do, you know. Know that feeling? True, I know, right? Well, hey, we're just getting there, right? Ads, heading out for grocery shopping. Sounds good, Coffee. We're just going to hit this ad real quick when we take a toke. If there's anyone out there that toke folk and toke folks, we can take a toke on 3 here. We like to do what's called a sync toke, where we all toke at the same time. Although, you know, due to stream lag, it's technically off a bit, but who the fuck cares? Toke, 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 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, go, toke! I forgot also, if you are a purveyor of Reddit and you want to go check out the subreddit, we also have the Horror Stories subreddit. You can post anything on here. It doesn't have to be horror stories or anything. Just if you have any stories, feel free to post them in there. No rules. Do whatever the hell you want. Don't really give a fuck. Just looking for creative minds to share intellectual ideas and story ideas. Anything from all sides and all genres, because I love delving from different genres to expand my grasp on those concepts of a part of a story, because whether you're writing in a specific genre, there's going to be all these little pieces in small pieces throughout the story if it's going to be a good story, you know? Every story's going to have a little tiny bit of horror element, suspense, mystery, right? Otherwise, like, what's in the story, right? So, it's more of a presentation-wise versus the genre, I guess, overall, you could say, right? But anyways, back to chapter 27 of Eye of the World, book 1 of the Wheel of Time series. As he swung it around his shoulders, thinking what a wonder it was that the cloak was big enough for him, Ilya said primly, "It could fit better." She glanced at the axe at his belt, and when she looked at him, her eyes were sad above her smile. "Could fit much better." All the tinkers did that. Their smiles never slipped. Their way was never any hesitation in their invitations to join them for a drink or to listen to the music. But their eyes always touched the axe, and he could feel what they thought. A tool of violence. There's never any excuse for violence to another human being. The way of the leaf. Sometimes he wanted to shout at them. There were Trollocs in the world, and Fades. There were those who would cut down every leaf. The Dark One was out there, and the way of the leaf would burn in Baalzamon's eyes. Stubbornly, he continued to wear the axe. He took to keeping his cloak thrown back, even when it was windy, so the half-moon blade was never hidden. Now and again, Elias looked quizzically at the weapon hanging heavily at his side, and grinned at him. Those yellow eyes seemed to read his mind. That almost made him cover the axe. Almost. The Tuathan camp was a source of consistent irritation. At least his dreams were normal there. Sometimes he woke up sweating from a dream of Trollocs and Fades storming into the camp. Rainbow-colored wagons turning to bonfires from hurled torches, people falling in pools of blood, men and women and children who ran and screamed and died, but made no effort to defend themselves against slashing scythe-like swords. Night after night he bolted upright in the dark, panting and reaching for his axe before he realized the wagons were not in flames, and no bloody muzzled shapes gnarled over torn and twisted bodies, littering the ground. But those were ordinary nightmares, and oddly comforting in their way. If there was ever a place for the Dark One to be in his dreams, it was in those, but he was not. No Baalzamon, just ordinary nightmares. He was aware of the wolves, though. When he was awake, they kept their distance from the camps and from the caravan on the move, but he always knew where they were. He could feel their contempt for the dogs guarding the Tuathan, noisy beasts who had forgotten what their jaws were for, had forgotten the taste of warm blood. They might frighten humans, but they would slink away to their bellies if the pack ever came. Each day his awareness was sharper, more clear. Dapple grew more impatient with every sunset. That Elias wanted to do this thing of taking the human south made it worth doing. But if it must be done, then let it be done. Let this slow travel end. Wolves were meant to roam, and she did not like being away from the pack so long. Impatience burned in wind, too. Hunting was worse than poor here, and he despised living on field mice. Something for cubs to stalk while learning to hunt. Fit food for the old, no longer able to pull down a deer or hamstring a wild ox. Sometimes Wind thought that Burn had been right. Leave human troubles to humans, but he was wary of such thoughts when Dapple was around, and even more so around Hopper. Hopper was a scarred and grizzled fighter, impassive with the knowledge of years, with guile that more than made up for anything of which age might have robbed him. For humans he cared nothing, but Dapple wished this thing done.
Thank you for redeeming chair dance. Hitox will now dance for you.
Thanks, Queen.
Please fully enjoy this immersive experience.
Hopper would wait as she waited, and run as she ran. Wolf or man, bull or bear, whatever challenged Dapple would find Hopper's jaws waiting to send him to the long sleep. That was the whole of life for Hopper, and that kept Wind cautious, and Dapple seemed to ignore the thoughts of both. All of it was clear in Perrin's mind. Fervently he wished for Camelin, for Moiraine, for Tar Valon, even if there were no answers. there could be an end to it. Elias looked at him, and he was sure the yellow-eyed man knew. Please, let there be an end.
Rest now, babe.
Thanks, Queen. Love you too. Always appreciated. Keeping me on my toes. Getting the blood pumping. Keeping my eyes open. Then I don't have to slap myself in the face. The dream began more pleasantly than most he had of late. He was at Albert Luhan's kitchen table. I'm here all week. It's gonna be a hell of a week, Queen. Mistress Luhan never allowed forge work or anything and that smacked of it to be brought into the house. Master Luhan even had to take her knives outside to sharpen them, but she tended her cooking and never said a word about the axe. She did not even say anything when a wolf entered from deeper in the house and curled up between Perrin and the door to the yard. Perrin went on sharpening. It would be time to use it soon. Abruptly, the wolf rose, rumbling deep in its throat, the thick ruff of fur on its neck rising. Baalzamon stepped into the kitchen from the yard. Mistress Luhan went on with her cooking. Perrin scrambled to his feet, raising the axe, but Baalzamon ignored the weapon, concentrating on the wolf instead. Flames danced where his eyes should be. Is this what you have to protect you? Well, I have faced this before, many times before. Crooked a finger, and the wolf howled as fire burst out of its eyes and ears and mouth, out of its skin. The stench of burning meat and hair filled the kitchen. Alsbet Luhan lifted the lid on a pot and stirred with a wooden spoon. Perrin dropped the axe and jumped forward, trying to beat out the flames with his hands. The wolf crumpled a black ash between his palms. Staring at the shapeless pile of char on Mistress Luhan's clean-swept floor, he backed away. He wished he could wipe the greasy soot from his hands, but he thought of scrubbing it off on his clothes, turned his stomach, snatched up the axe, gripping the haft with his knuckles cracked. Leave me alone, he shouted. Mistress Luhan tapped the spoon on the rim of the pot and replaced the lid, humming to herself. You cannot run from me, Baalzamon said. You cannot hide from me. If you are the one, you are mine. The heat from the fires of his face forced Perrin across the kitchen until his back came up against the wall. Mistress Luhan opened the oven to check her bread. The eye of the world will consume you, Baalzamon said. I mark you mine. Flung out his clenched hand as if throwing something. When his fingers opened, a raven streaked at Perrin's face. Perrin screeched as the black beak pierced his left eye, and sat up, clutching his face, surrounded by the sleeping wagons of the traveling people. Slowly lowered his hands. There was no pain, no blood, but he could remember it, remember the stabbing agony. He shuddered, and suddenly Elias was squatting beside him in the pre-dawn, one hand outstretched as if to shake him awake. Beyond the trees where the wagons lay, the wolves howled, one sharp cry from three throats. He shared their sensations: fire, pain, fire, hate, hate, kill. Yes, Elias said softly, it is time. Get up, boy. It's time for us to go. Perrin scrambled out of his blankets while he was still bundling his bedroll. Rain came out of his wagon, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The seeker glanced at the sky and froze halfway down the steps, his hand still raised to his face. Only his eyes moved as he studied the sky intently. The Perrin could not understand what he was looking at. A few clouds hung in the east underside, streaked with pink from the sun yet to rise, but there was nothing else to see. Rain seemed to listen as well and smelled the air. There was no sound except the wind in the trees, and no smell but the faint smoky remnant of last night's campfires. Elias returned with his own scanty belongings, and Rain came to the rest of the way. We must change the direction we travel, my old friend. Seeker looked uneasily at the sky again. We go another way this day. Will you be coming with us? Elias shook his head, and Rain nodded as if he had known all along. "Well, take care, my old friend. There is something about today." He started to look up once more, but pulled his eyes back down before they rose above the wagon tops. "I think the wagons will go east. Perhaps all the way to the spine of the world. Perhaps we'll find a steading and stay there a while." "Trouble never enters the steading," Elias agreed. "But the Ogier are none too open to strangers." "Everyone is open to the traveling people," Rain said, and grinned. "Besides, even Ogier have pots and things to mend. Come, let us have some breakfast, and we'll talk about it." "No time," Elias said. "We move on today, too. As soon as possible. It's a day for moving, it seems." Rain tried to convince him to at least stay long enough for food, and when Ilya appeared from the wagon with Egwin, she added her arguments, though not as strenuously as her husband. She had all the right words, but her politeness was stiff, and it was plain she would be glad to see Elias's back, if not Egwin's. Egwin did not notice the regretful sidelong looks Ilya gave her. She asked what was going on, and Perrin prepared himself for her to say she wanted to stay with the Twathan, but when Elias explained, she only nodded thoughtfully and hurried back into the wagon to gather her things. Finally, Rain drew his hands. "All right, I don't know what I ever let I ever let a visitor leave this camp without a farewell feast, but uncertainly, his eyes raised toward the sky again. "Well, we need an early start ourselves, I think. Perhaps we will eat as we journey, but at least let everyone say goodbye." Elias started to protest, but Rain was already hurrying from wagon to wagon, pounding on the doors where there was no one awake. By the time a tinker came, leading Bella, the whole camp had turned out in their finest and brightest, a mass of color that made Rain and Ilya's red and yellow wagon seem almost plain. The big dogs strolled through the crowd with their tongues lolling out of their mouths, looking for someone to scratch their ears, while Perrin and the others endured handshake after handshake and hug after hug. The girls, who had danced every night, would not be content with shaking hands, and their hugs made Perrin suddenly wish he was not leaving after all, until he remembered how many others were watching, and then his face almost matched the Seeker's wagon. Aram drew Egwin a little aside. Perrin could not hear what he had to say to her over the noise of goodbyes, but she kept shaking her head slowly at first, then more firmly as he began to gesture pleadingly. His face shifted from pleading to arguing, but she continued to shake her head stubbornly until Ilya rescued her with sharp words to her grandson. Scowling, Aram pushed away through the crowd, abandoning the rest of the farewell. Ilya watched him go, hesitating to the point of calling him back. She's relieved, too, Perrin thought. Relieved he doesn't want to go with us, with Egwin. When he had shaken every hand in the camp at least once and hugged every girl at least twice, the crowd moved back, opening a little space around Rain and Ilya and the three visitors. "You came in peace," Rain intoned, bowing formally, hands on his chest. "Depart now in peace. Always will our fires welcome you in peace. The way of the leaf is peace." "Peace be on you always," Elias replied, "and on all the people." He hesitated, then added, "I will find the song, or another will find the song, but the song will be sung, this year or in a year to come. As it once was, so shall it be again, world without end." Rain blinked in surprise, and Ilya looked completely flabbergasted, but all the other Twathan murmured in reply, "World without end, world and time without end." Rain and his wife hurriedly said the same after everyone else. Then it really was time to go. A few last farewells, a few last admonitions to take care, a few last smiles and winks, and they were making their way out of the camp. Rain accompanied them as far as the edge of the trees, a pair of the dogs cavorting by his side. "Truly, my old friend, you must take great care this day. There is wickedness loose in the world, I fear, and whatever you pretend, you are not so wicked that it will not gobble you up." "Peace be on you," Elias said. "And on you," Rain said sadly. When Rain was gone, Elias scowled at finding the other two looking at him. "So I don't believe in their fool song," he growled. "No need to make them feel bad by messing up their ceremony, was there? I told you they set a store by ceremony sometimes, of course." Egwin said gently. No need at all. Elias turned away, muttering to himself. Dapple, Wind, and Hopper came to greet Elias, not frolicking as the dogs had done, but a dignified meeting of equals. Perrin caught what passed between them. Fire, eyes, pain, heart fang, death, heart fang. Perrin knew what they meant. The Dark One. They were telling about his dream, their dream. He shivered as the wolves ranged out ahead, scouting the way. It was Egwin's turn to ride Bella, and he walked beside her. Elias led as usual, a steady, ground-eating pace. Perrin did not want to think about his dream. He had thought that the wolves made them safe, not complete. Except full heart, full mind. You still struggle, only complete when you accept. He forced the wolves out of his mind and blinked in surprise. He had not known he could do that. He determined not to let them back in again, even in dreams. He was not sure if the thought was his or theirs. Egwin still wore the string of blue beads Aram had given her, and a little spring of something with tiny bright red leaves in her hair, another gift from the young Twathan. That Aram had tried to talk her into staying with the traveling people, Perrin was sure. He was glad she had not given in, but he wished she did not finger the beads so fondly. Finally he said, "What did you spend so much time talking about with Ilya? If you weren't dancing with that long-legged fellow, you were talking to her like it was some kind of secret." "Ilya was giving me advice on being a woman," Egwin said absently. He began laughing, and she gave him a hooded, dangerous look that he failed to see. "Advice? Nobody tells us how to be men, we just are." "That," Egwin said, "is probably why you make such a bad job of it." Up ahead, Elias cracked loudly. End of chapter 27. Alright. So, moving on to the React section. Today is character arcs. So, let's see what is to be said about character arcs.
Okay, now we're ready. How much coffee do you have? Yes. Alright, so at the time of recording, this was the state of things. So here we are. And for those of you who voted for subplots, that guy's going to be next. He's in the works, cooking, etc. Character arcs. I tell you, I love a good arc. Typically, when I'm at any kind of social function and I've got someone cornered and at my mercy while I talk their ear off about whatever my current thing is, it's almost always a character arc that I'm talking about. I spent a really embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out the best way to actually present this video. The concept of character arcs is both very simple and very complex. Simple because the ideas are actually quite straightforward. Complex because there's so much variation in there that studying it can get a little overwhelming. I couldn't help but notice that closely examining one character arc seemed to neglect a lot of important knowledge that one could glean by looking at other character arcs. As much as I would love to sit here for the next 6 or 7 hours and talk about all my favorite character arcs, one does need to, eat and sleep and stuff. I do want to get this out of the way first.
If only we didn't have to do that kind of shit.
Not all characters need arcs. I know that somewhat flies in the face of conventional wisdom, but they aren't always essential, not even for your main characters. A big reason for this confusion is that a lot of people conflate dynamic characters with changing characters.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely must have dynamic characters, but that's not always going to necessitate.
Yeah, that's like my character Varius in my main book. He is like the Shakespeare of his time. He's like a bard, and he basically does not change at all through the entirety of the book. He's basically like the comic relief in a way. But he's also like kind of dark as well, right? Like his main thing is like investment in like religion and philosophy and history of the Beastmen and the different Beastmen and how Because his whole thing is, like, his character is basically built on conspiracy theories. Where there's, like, the people inside of the tree that are the anti-Beastmen who have conspiracy theories about the Beastmen. He has conspiracy theories about the tree considering the Beastmen. Because he's like, I'm pretty sure, since there's no history inside of the tree, and there's, like, no written fucking anything for anyone besides the Beastmen, it's pretty fantastical what story the Beastmen are trying to say. But in some ways, those could just be extreme embellishments for actual events that happened. So, his entire character is, like, unraveling the past, but he never actually truly changes as a character. He's just always looking for the next adventure. And it's like, he's a journey, not the destination. So as soon as he gets the destination, he, like, throws whatever he's gained at the destination over his shoulder and tries to find another journey. Whereas, like, his counterpart character, Gluttony, who's a paladin / bard, is more of, like, superiority religiousness with, like, a paladin of, like, pushing righteousness and that idea. And he basically has his own idea and take on religion. But throughout the story, through his interactions with Varius over time, and his interaction with the Beastmen on scale outside of the world, he actually, like, changes his views and completely morphs his entire personality from being just this like for instance, like, if we take an example out of Eye of the World, like the Twathan people, right? Like, he would be like a non-retaliative, like, tank, right? Like, he never wanted to attack, right? He's there to be the shield so people can hit him instead of other people. And I wanted one of his things to be, like, dual-wielding shields. And he's an avian, but he's so fat that he's called the Basilisk, because he literally can't fly anymore, because he's, like, 500 fucking pounds. And he's basically just a massive tank that you can't fuck with. And he'll just, like, curl himself around people and defend them with, like, his double shields. And as he goes through the story and sees all the strife and stuff like that, he can't hold himself back anymore from his ideals. And he says that his ideals are what's causing this, like, strife, essentially. Because he refuses to accept the fact that there's evil in the world, that he, you know, the way to fight evil is not by turning the other cheek. Like, you do need to stand up in the face of true evil and fight it. And there is a righteousness in and among that in the way that you do it. So he basically goes from being a stand up, I'll take all the hits for you, but I'll never delve one back, to being every hit I hit back on you is your own fault in retaliation. And his entire character arc basically revolves around losing people and not being able to protect people because he refuses to basically kill people. So the same people are coming back to harm him over and over until he realizes that the only way that it's like he is actually harming himself more by letting these people get away. And that's when he makes the conscious decision to say, despite being a paladin and of righteousness, there is still, like, a righteous fury and a righteous vengeance that can be enacted and still keep your soul essentially pure as a paladin. And then there's Husai, the main character, who goes from, I'm too fatherly of a figure, to, I don't care about anyone's feelings, to, fuck it, I'm just gonna go to the front lines. And then realizing that he is not the answer, he's actually the question, and the Warriors of Light are the answer. And then he has to take the step back and be like, despite being the chosen one, I may not be the hero, I may not be the one who needs to fulfill this prophecy, I'm just the the word of mouth spreading the knowledge for the next generation to be able to defeat the evil of the world.
Necessitate an arc. I'll explain that in a minute, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I want to get this out of the way too. Sometimes a common name is misleading. A character's development is actually very rarely in an arc shape. Sometimes it's like this, or like this, or even like this. But arc is a helpful name, so that's fine. For convenience, in this video, I'll refer to the gradual transformation of a character throughout the story as the character's development arc. To start with, what precisely is a character arc or character development arc? Well, there isn't really a precise answer. Broadly speaking, a development arc is a character's dynamic transformation throughout the course of the story. Nothing more, nothing less. I like this.
What were they at the beginning? What are they at the end?
For variance in there. The transformation part of that is
and
what
how many
indicates
transformations
that the
do they go
character is
through?
changing in the course of their development. Now, there's that word again, dynamic. That's important.
Well, then it's like you look like a character, like a good example of a character that's dynamic but never changes is Goku. No matter how powerful Goku gets, he always tries to find the next opponent that's more powerful than him to get more powerful. He never changes loving fighting, no matter how much he wins or how much he loses. He's just always on the verge of the next fight.
Like, very simply just means motion. Not necessarily constant change, but constant motion. So a character, being a living person, will experience constant internal motion. This can be psychological or emotional or moral. Even if a person doesn't change, their lack of change is still accomplished by constantly moving back to their original state. They go along in life, something happens, and
they
jostles
revert
them around, and they decide to return to status quo. This is still accomplished with constant action, which gives you, in fancy terms, dynamic characters. So even if your characters are very dynamic, that doesn't mean they're going to have an arc of transformation or anything like that. And that's fine. Let's just get this out of the way here and now. You can choose to have no character transformation arc at all, but you can't choose to have characters who aren't dynamic. That's mandatory, I'm afraid. This is why I don't really like that term, flat character arc, because even if a character never changes, there's still constant motion along their character path, without which the character would seem like a flat piece of cardboard. So just remember that character development's optional. Dynamic characters, mandatory. Or to use different terms, change, optional. Constant motion, mandatory. Now that that's out of the way, let's get back to development arcs. What kinds of development arcs are there? Truly, any kind of transformation is suitable for an arc and is considered a development arc. And also any amount of transformation. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be an arc. Early versions of this video had about 10 extra minutes examining some 15 or so different character arcs to demonstrate the breadth of what's possible. But I decided to instead focus on how to build the development arc rather than what arcs can be built. Because the long and short of all this is that there are as many types of character development arcs as there are characters. Which one you choose or whether you even use one at all depends entirely on the character you're creating and the story you're writing. Don't get caught up in thinking about fitting your story into types of development arcs. Instead, think of where you want your character to start and where you want them to end, and then find a good way to get them from point A to point B. This list, for example, claims to list every type of character arc. Off the top of my head, I can think of 6 or 7 character arcs from fiction that I really enjoyed that did not fit into the categories listed here. Had those writers relied on this list of types or even the concept of types of character arcs, those beautiful stories likely would never have been written. So keep this in the back of your mind. There are no types of development arcs. Whatever transformation you want your character to undergo, the only limit is your imagination. You can have a character become a smart, noble leader while declining physically, only to eventually slip into tyranny and become a villain, after which he attempts to redeem himself while also trying to heal his physical ailments. I mean, that'd be a long story, but it'd be incredible as well. I've seen a series in which the main character becomes rapidly more intelligent while also becoming morally more selfish and heartless. And then he shifts and starts to become a very good person, all the while his mental abilities increase exponentially until ultimately they decline so sharply that he became like a young child, thus concluding his character arc almost back where he had begun. Anything is possible. It only matters that you build the development arc correctly. Once again, the big question here is how? How do you transform a character in a way that's believable, realistic, and even meaningful?
Like, for instance, the first transformation for Husai is at the very beginning of the book, where he goes from a content bureaucrat living out the rest of his life feeling like he failed his objective to there is more to life than just me being the chosen one, and there's more to life than just being this. And after, like, receiving the Calm Pearl and thinking that he's either being blackmailed or warned about something, and then with the inauguration and the riots, he's like, okay, we need to go out in the world and we need to make sure, like, everything is good. So we're going to do an audit of all of the main cities in the Adventurers Guild. And that's, like, his excuse to be able to leave the guild. And then he takes the Viceroy just step down with him so that they can do, like, a bridge between the tree and the Adventurers Guild to see what the hell is actually going on out in the world, because they need to be able to come back confidently and tell the people inside of the tree what's actually going on out in the world and whether they're right about this or they're wrong about this. Because even Husai knows the prophecies of allowing beastmen inside of the tree, and with the reveal of Elamia being inside the tree for the last 5 years, plus who knows how long, plus there could be others mixed in there. Yeah, all of a sudden everything is becoming way too real for him, and it's all happening through the evolution of information and, like, connecting the dots. Like, he didn't have enough dots on the grid, but over these, like, 3 chapters, enough dots have appeared that he's now starting to make a line that's starting to point him in a certain direction. And that changes him from being lazy and complacent to being active and motivational, essentially. And then gathering everyone up and then leaving. And then his flaw is shown in the fact that he's too fatherly and he won't let Zayd leave, which is his ultimate flaw, because that gets Zayd killed. And meeting up with Gluttony off of the bat and bringing back, like, 2 or 3 of his old party members, essentially. Living back in his old days of being an adventurer, he, like, quickly falls back into the way of, the casual life of traveling around and not having to do fucking paperwork all day, essentially. Living his best life, doing his own thing. And then that's where he starts to realize even more that he's kind of like babying people in the party and not letting them live up to their full potential. So then he starts to let them live up to their full potential and winds up, putting them in danger. So it's like the overcompensation. And he's like, I have to find this medium between, so maybe I should ask them. So this is when he stops being so personable about himself and lets other people kind of in on their end and is like, okay, well, what do you think? What are you comfortable with? And it's like, that's what he had been missing the entire time, is basically taking their side of the story into consideration with everything else, right? He'd just take everything that he saw and assumed, and then he would use that in his calculations to be like, all right, is this a challenge that you're going to be able to overcome? And then he starts to ask them, do you think that you can overcome this? Is this something you're afraid of? And at first it would be like, oh, if you're afraid of it, he wouldn't even touch it. And then he's like, well, you need to be slightly afraid of something because you need to be able to get out of your comfort zone. And it's like all these small things are showing him that he needs to move away from being emotionally connected to them while he's training them, or he's not going to be training them in the way that's going to make them survive as adventurers. And that's kind of like, his realization of, I'm actually going to get these guys killed. And then that's what happens, is he gets Zayd killed because of it. Even after all this realization, because it's out of his hands to be able to basically dismiss the order that he had before that left Zayd behind at the tree. Because now they know that the Beastman War is on and they're headed to Garuda, and he doesn't have time to go back and grab Zayd. And by the time that the attack on Garuda happens and everything goes to shit, it's way too fucking late for everything. Because the reinforcements coming to Garuda were from Ifrit, and by the time they left, Zayd didn't have a chance to do anything, so he was still left inside of the tree.
How do you plan such a transformation in advance? How do you build the arc? A point to mention. Some of this will make a little more sense to you if you've seen my character creation video. That will help guide you through the initial...
I feel like I'm doing this backwards, because every time she mentions a video that I haven't watched...
that are also going to be used to craft characters'
Fuck
arcs.
it.
Structurally,
We'll just
I
do...
also
We're
talk
too
a bit
advanced
about
for this
mini
shit.
arcs, so if that idea is unfamiliar to you, I also talk about that in my pacing video. But it is pretty self-explanatory as we go along. As for how, the technique is deceptively simple. You pick the character's starting point, you decide where you want them to end, and then you determine how you want them to get there. Sounds easy and hard, and it is a little of both, but let's see if we can't demystify the process a little. This is bad. We're already on the second cup. So the first, let's call it a principle of character arcs is you need to choose both where the character starts and where you want them to end before you plan their development. As tempting as it often is to let our characters tell us who they are, do remember that you are the boss. Exercising your absolute dictatorial authority over your story and its many components is often the only way to keep things from spiraling entirely out of control. In few other areas is this as important as in character creation. They're people to us, naturally, but we're still in charge. And being in charge means making calculated decisions. If you want to give your character an arc, start by knowing first who they are at the beginning, and then decide who you want them to be at the end. If you want your character to start as a proud, respected king or statesman of some kind, that's great. Now, who do you want him to be at the end of the story? Maybe you want the story to follow his decline, in which case you need to decide specifically what that decline will entail. Is he going to be defeated in a battle, in a foolish war of his own making? Is he going to devolve into paranoia and suspicion, executing all his friends and allies until only his enemies remain? Maybe you want him to end up as a happy farmer somewhere with no authority but with a lovely wife who weaves baskets. Whatever you want, just make a decision. Now you have point A and point B.
Direction.
Once you have these 2 points, you're halfway to creating his arc. But first, you must remember this next principle. The seeds of your character's final form, so to speak, must always be present in their initial form.
Has
That is
anyone
to
ever
say,
given you an
once you
Alaskan
know where you
pipeline
want them
before?
to go, how you want the character...
I'm not even gonna ask, Mike. I'm not even gonna ask, bro. Probably not. Just gonna say that off the bat. Probably not. But, yeah. So, like, I was just thinking, like, for instance, Sam in the first story, right? He starts out the act of pooping into the condom, freezing the rubber overnight, then inserting it into one's anus. Okay. Yup. Sounds about right. Sounds about right, Mike. Okay. Yep. Yep, you know, people do what they gotta do, right? Hey, it comes out, it goes back in, that's just... Hey, man, what are you gonna do, right? We're only human. We're fucking animals. What do you want from me? I don't know. Is what it is, right? Gotta do what you gotta do.
Character to end developmentally, you need to make sure that the seeds of that are present.
Oh, right, Sam. So Sam starts out as a AI developer, right? And he's like, you know, happy-go-lucky, just going to work, dude, his normal raising and everything. And then he turns out to finding that his great aunt is actually an abomination that's like ageless and is consuming the souls of his co-workers and bodies of his co-workers and uploading them into the mainframe. And then he has to find his grandfather, the brain in a jar. So it's like he goes from like this normal person just living his life to like an investigator breaking into government buildings, becoming a hacker, using his like engineering, like computer engineering skills in order to like break into mainframes in the military and like get all of this information and everything like that. So basically it kind of goes rogue and does his own thing, goes outside of the bounds, even though he's like a law-abiding citizen by the beginning, right? And then by the end, he turns into, because the end, spoiler, the end of the story is, Lisa just decides that she's just going to consume him. So Trevor is the only one who's left there at the end, and Sam is there to guard Trevor, essentially. That's how I'm planning the ending. I don't know if that's the way it's going to end, because I'm like, you're supposed to use the glitch to bring down the thing, and then it's like, Trevor's ultimate thing is to allow himself to be uploaded, and that's what activates the seed. I don't know. Maybe Sam is the real seed, and when Sam gets uploaded, it causes the entire system to die, but now all of the people are basically just vegetables. And then Trevor's stuck there as a brain in a jar, basically for all eternity. Or until someone destroys the lab, or until it, like, runs out of energy or something like that. You know? Some sort of dark, fucked up, like, open-ended kind of ending thing. That's the idea for it. So we'll kind of be writing that today, because we have the outline for it, but we just don't have the ending yet. We have all the way up to, like, infiltration and capture, because he gets captured, obviously, and then he gets released by Trevor interacting with the system. He finds Trevor, he's led to Trevor, and then either there and then he gets captured, or they leave, or something along those lines, but it's like Lisa's been doing it the whole time just to kind of wear down Trevor. And he's like, I told you I wouldn't touch your wife. I never said anything about... and your son. But I never said anything about your grandson. I just wanted to make sure that you were here in order to witness it. Kind of idea. Inferring the whole idea of why Lisa never took Sam in the first place and let him go was because she had greater plans for him.
Character traits that make up their initial form, which will be what you decide for them when you're creating their character sheet. Let me explain this more clearly. If you have a character who is ultimately going to become a noble hero and leader, he might start as a humble shepherd in the middle of nowhere. But that humble shepherd must have in him the seeds of the hero and leader. And I'm not speaking in some metaphorical self-help seminar kind of way. I mean that the character traits he starts with have to have in them the beginnings of that final form you want him to achieve. These seeds can exist in many forms, depending on how you want him to travel the arc path from point A to point B. In the case of our shepherd, perhaps it's courage and selflessness. Maybe he's clever and strategic. Maybe he's ambitious and good with people. So as a humble shepherd, maybe he's the guy in the village that everyone always goes to when they need a dispute resolved. Maybe he's the guy they wake up in the middle of the night when the bandits are coming. Maybe he's just really good at keeping the peace between his siblings, and so on and so on. And this trait evolves to a capacity for peacekeeping and diplomacy even as the stakes get higher and higher on the path of his arc. This was accomplished beautifully in Guy Ritchie's unsung 2017 King Arthur film. He knew that he wanted to take his Arthur from a humble upbringing as a bastard in a brothel to become the king of all England. His traits at the very beginning included ambition, shrewd people skills, charm and charisma, and a genuine loyalty to the people under his protection. Even a casual observer can see how these traits are the beginning of his final form as a king, not just a king, but a good king. I feel like this concept is still just a tiny bit abstract, so let's try to explain this with a more in-depth example. I deliberately chose an almost exaggeratedly dramatic transformation here with the character of Bai Cho-fei from the 2022 Chinese martial arts series Heroes. This is a kind of Shakespearean tragedy following three sworn brothers' evolution into heroes on the very brink of greatness, and then their sharp fall from power and grace within the martial arts world. Bai Cho-fei began as a noble, upright hero and transformed into a terrifying villain, and then finally a tragic, broken man who didn't know how to redeem himself. Because it was so organic and believable, I found this arc very interesting, and so I studied it and found some wonderful insight into the process. Now, Bai Cho-fei's writers started him as a hero to some degree, and chose to take his development to a point where he would become a particularly brutal villain. Point A, point B. We're not looking at the path right now, but we do want to look closer at his character's starting point here when he was a hero. Doing so, we find that the seeds of the villain were there among his character traits from the very beginning. Let's take a quick moment here to break him down so you can see what I mean specifically. For the record, I particularly like this example because it's very complex and very elegant. The story of Heroes wasn't quite what it could have been, but I found all the characters exceptionally drawn and worth studying. He started as a very lonely man whose loss of his family was a formative part of his personality. This, in turn, created a major defining trait in him that placed family above everything else. He was also very ambitious. In terms of martial ability, he was strong and capable, among the best in the world. Because of how much he valued the bonds of family, he was very loyal to his friends. This loyalty was more of a sub-trait that stemmed from this other dominant trait here. He had another dominant trait that took a little while to be revealed to the audience. He knew his strength was largely unmatched, so he believed that his power in that regard gave him the right to determine what was right and wrong, a kind of hardline ends justify the means mentality. This trait of his had been forged from having grown up entirely alone, with no one to guide him or teach him right from wrong. He observed that the strong took from the weak and resolved to be one of the strong. Not so he could take from the weak, but so nothing could be taken from him. Right and wrong had always been a matter of his own judgment. Remember, what we're looking at here is how the seeds of this dramatic and impressive transformation were all present in his initial form. This was a man who started out saving innocent civilians in distress and became a person who had children put to death. How could that latter form possibly be present in that starting form? Let me show you. His heroism was achieved by combining his loyalty and strength with his willingness to be influenced by his friends. His two sworn brothers were very good and had very solid moral cores. Because the importance he placed on family was the strongest of all his traits, he was willing to defer his own moral judgment to them. He would throw his strength behind whatever they said was right or wrong, and that made him happy because of how much he longed for family. This kept him and his heroism stable for a long time. His villainy was hidden away right here, in his ambition and in his sense that might makes right, and the ends justify the means. These are the seeds of what he would become. He wasn't a villain initially because his dominant trait was being influenced onto a good path. That is, these things combined motivated him to stay good. Sometimes the seeds of the villain would sprout little seedlings, like when he'd sacrifice innocent people to capture a murderer. And then his brothers would come and stomp on those seedlings and he'd get pulled back onto the path of righteousness. Eventually, one of his brothers died, and the other was forced to abandon him to be tortured to death in the enemy's dungeon. And with that, the hero in him lost its roots and withered, leaving a gaping void in his personality, and leaving only these final prominent character traits of ambition and that tendency of his to believe that might makes right. These two traits could now blossom unchecked into horrible malformations. Now this, plus the pain of loss and abandonment and other factors, transformed this once hero into one of the most horrific villains in the entire story. If I've explained this well enough, hopefully you can see that the seeds of the writer's desired transformation of the character were deliberately written into his starting point in order that the transformation that they wanted to create could be realistic and organic. All they had to do was create a story plot that would allow this transformation to take place. We'll get into how to do that in a minute here. Plot and character development must serve each other. What I mean by this is that the goal of your plot, so the overall story goal, needs to in some way be relevant to your goal for the character's development, or vice versa. This is a little harder to explain. Basically, what you want to do is make sure that the plot and the character's development are relevant to each other. If a character needs to learn how to pole vault, then it follows that a pole vaulting competition of some kind needs to be built into the plot. A little more abstractly, if your character needs to learn to be a responsible husband, then the plot needs to give him ways to either be responsible or shirk responsibility. If the plot never challenges that specific aspect of his character that you're trying to develop, you'll never have a chance to build a development arc. Another aspect of that, if you want to make your character grow and transform into a better person throughout the story, then that character can't start in a state of perfection with nothing to learn and no way to grow. They have to start less mature, less intelligent, less cool even than you want them to end up. You have to be willing to give them a chance to grow if the plot demands growth. Give your audience a chance to look at your character and say, oof, that guy's got a long way to go. If you want your character to go from a timid coward to a brave heroine, you'll need to build into the plot instances in which her courage is tested. That's the kind of plot you're going to need. And you have to be willing to let her fail in the course of that plot so that she can learn and so that your audience can understand the difficulty involved in her transformation. The plot's path has to include the stepping stones that your character will need to proceed along their development path. If this feels a little constricting, try to remember that that's actually a good thing. If you set for yourself a goal to build a specific path, then focusing on that path alone is going to result in a very focused and structurally solid story. So some self-imposed restriction is a good thing. All of character development is a series of choices. I didn't really mean for that to sound quite so philosophical. That said, this principle is the secret to making all characters dynamic. Not to oversimplify things, but so much of character development is watching people make choices. And it's interesting because by it, you can watch a person, fictional in this case, evolve before your very eyes. Every development arc is built out of a series of choices. You take a character along the plot path and you present them with choices having to do with the progression of the plot. Their decisions in these moments are what constitutes the path of their development arc. In order to change, even if it's just a small change, a person must make a choice. Even if they stay the same, it is a choice for them to do so. This choice represents motion, inner motion in this case, which is what I was saying about characters being dynamic. So if you make every aspect of their character a choice, the character will always seem dynamic and alive. A writer should write this into the development arc in a way that's very clear and tangible to the audience. That is, make the choice aspect very clear. It's common to see this exaggerated, which is also fine. The point is to emphasize that every point along their development hinges on a choice that the character must make, and also make that choice clear and interesting to the audience. This doesn't just make the characters feel more real and their development feel more organic, it is yet another way to make a story more engaging. This time, however, the engagement is deeper even than what will happen next, and gets into who is this person going to become. Now, structurally, using a series of choices to plot a development arc is going to give you these handy little brackets or anchors that will connect your development arc to your plot. Think of it this way. A character's development arc has a beginning and an end. Yes, just like a story arc does. And with a story arc, this vast, overwhelming middle ground can be built and structured using mini arcs. But what about the character? Just as you place these mini arcs as kind of plot stations that you gradually traverse through one at a time, in a development arc you will be placing points of choice. But as the character makes a choice, a point is placed along their path. These points then connect into a development arc. Almost always, I would even say always, these choice points will occur at the same time as plot mini arcs, mini climaxes. In fact, very often, though not always, that choice that the character makes is the mini climax. In Gladiator, when Commodus learned that his father had chosen Maximus as his heir and not him, he had a choice between accepting his father's decision or fighting it. He chose, in that moment, to kill his father, which was the startling mini climax that concluded that mini arc, and also gave us the therefore that moved us into the next mini arc. Commodus killed his father, therefore Commodus will become emperor, and also, more immediately, he will kill Maximus to silence him, all because he made a choice. From a character development standpoint, this choice represented the first major step along Commodus's path to becoming the unhinged tyrannical villain that was his destined end. Later, when he had to choose between his own will, killing Maximus in the arena, and giving in to the will of the people who wanted him to live, he chose to give in to the people. This was another mini climax in the plot's path, whether the thumb went up or down. Commodus's choice determined what the mini climax was, leading to the therefore of Maximus living through the day and growing in popularity. But it was also another point of choice along Commodus's development arc. As far as he was concerned, this was a failure for him, taking a step farther away from the strong, ruthless leader he wanted to become. But from a writing standpoint, this moved closer to unraveling him, as his constant humiliating defeats by Maximus were a major motivating factor for him. All of this from one choice. Choices are powerful tools in writing. They can build plots and develop characters at the same time. Is your character a coward whose development end point will be a brave hero? Then at the first point in your plot, when he's faced with a chance to be brave, make him choose. Maybe this time he fails and hides in fear. That represents a point of choice on his arc, and it means he's either stayed where he is or possibly gotten a little worse. His choice to hide and not be brave has also informed the plot. This moment of decision came at the same moment as a mini arc's mini climax. So his choice will create a therefore that will lead to the next plot mini arc, which will also in turn lead the character to another opportunity to either be brave or be cowardly, thus another point of choice along his arc. String together enough of these and you've got yourself a development arc. All characters, especially main characters, need to be making choices throughout the story. An unchanged character still makes choices, but the difference in this case is that those choices have not been crafted by the writer with the express purpose of developing the character, but only the plot, while also illuminating the character to the audience. In the case of Jeremy Renner's character in The Bourne Legacy, for example, his character was fixed throughout the story. He had no development arc, but the plot was built around choices made by him and by Marta Shearing, who did have a development arc. But his choices had to do only with the plot's development. They involved his own character traits and motivations, which were the same from the moment we met him until the credits rolled, but they only moved the plot forward. Choices are only one half of the tool set used to build a character's development arc. The other half is the character's existing traits as you, the writer, have defined them, preferably with a detailed character sheet. We started talking about this earlier when I mentioned that the seeds of the character's final form must exist in their starting traits. Now let's take that a step further. When you're crafting your character's arc and you're determining the choices they make along the way, these choices have to be informed by a combination of their existing traits and the events of the plot. But the most crucial factor is their existing traits. So when you decide what choice you want a character to make at a given point, you have to make that determination based on that character's traits.
Yep.
If you fail to do this and just make the choice at random or make the choice that seems to best suit the plot at the moment, the character will lack consistency and the development arc will come out feeling contrived and unrealistic. Alright, so let's go ahead and take what we've talked about to create a demonstration character arc. I don't think we need a story premise to do this for this demonstration, so let's just jump in. But we need a person. So okay, alright, I know. I've been up to my eyeballs in the historical records of a lot of ancient monarchies, so I've kind of got royalty on the brain. So how about we make ourselves a prince? But let's put him in a modern absolute monarchy, like Kings. Do you remember Kings? Oh, what a great series. Anyway, our prince. So his father is the aged king, so he's a little older, maybe in his 40s. The first thing we need to do is figure out where he starts and where I want him to end. But I want to throw together a simple character sheet to get him off the ground. Let's see. I want to make him start politically clueless and easily controlled and manipulated. Let's call that naive. He's also eager to please people, especially people he loves or admires. He wants his father's approval and praise. He wants to be admired, but he's not ambitious. He really cares about his family, but he doesn't really think about the common people. This doesn't quite make him selfish, but maybe too narrowly focused. Whatever, you understand. He's also very genuine and sincere. To add a little color, let's say he's afraid of his enormously powerful and commanding father and loves him, but his familial attachment is to his maternal uncle, who is strong and powerful but doting. This guy has provided a substitute for a father's love. He's also the one who's been teaching him about ruling. Obviously, I'm building this uncle into a manipulative villain. So all that combined is his starting point. But how do I want my prince to end? Maybe I'll make him an astronaut. I'm not going to make him an astronaut. Although, that'd be a cool story. Obviously, I want my prince to be king, but I want him to take a circuitous route. I like less direct development arcs personally. So I want to take him on a path that looks more like this. I want him to slip maybe ankle deep into villainy and then pull himself back onto the right path to ultimately become a very good, if somewhat ruthless king, but certainly a wiser king. I love doing this. It's like a challenge. You plop yourself into the center of a maze and you have to find your path out, drawing the map along the way. I've done my first and second step. I've built my character sheet. If I were writing this guy for real, or if I had more time, I'd make this character sheet a lot more detailed, but we'll keep it simple like this for now. And I've decided my character's starting point and ending point. What now? In these early development stages of characters and stories, I personally find it more helpful to plan them concurrently. Not everyone will want to work that way. Maybe you'll want to plan your character arc in detail and then build your story around it, or maybe the other way around. If one of those methods works for you, stick with it. We all approach storytelling based on how our minds work, so what works for me might not work for you. But me, personally, at this point, I like to think in my initial broad strokes, encompassing both character and story. I want my naive prince to descend a little into darkness. His uncle, my appointed villain, will help with that. So his uncle will manipulate him into making ugly choices that hurt both his father and the people. This awareness that his decisions have caused harm while increasing his and his uncle's power will awaken in him a dormant trait that will help him begin to form a moral code. His desire to protect his family will expand, and he'll also want to protect his people. His harsh lessons at the feet of his uncle, whose true colors will be revealed, will teach him that a certain amount of ruthlessness will be necessary to shore up the power he needs to protect both his family and his people. Because, you know, he's probably going to end up having to kill his uncle at some point. And that's going to be both a choice and a very hard lesson that will catalyze this aspect of his development, this ruthlessness. This is enough knowledge for me to start. Beyond this broad blueprint, I'd prefer the rest of his development to occur organically, that is, with the progression of the plot. That said, I do want to keep his development in mind as I plan the plot. So what I'll do is
I do
keep
all
this
this shit in
blueprint
my
nearby
head.
in his character sheet.
My
and
problem
have it
is
next to
that
me
I guess
as
it doesn't keep
plan and
characters
build
as
the structure of my
consistent.
story. As the plot
But
moves
it depends on
along,
how
each mini arc will
long
reach a
I've had
mini
that character in my
climax,
head for,
and
right?
many of them will involve choices that he
And most of
will
them are
have
based
to
upon
make.
real
I
people,
want to
so
aim these arcs and these choices toward my final goal for him. As an example, as I plan a mini arc in which the evil villain uncle organizes a plan whereby a powerful family will be framed for treason and executed so that the uncle can kind of absorb all their assets and lands, I could just make this a mini climax to the mini arc, with my prince looking on as his uncle arranges the sequence of events to reach this horrifying conclusion. The story would proceed very nicely if I did that, but his development arc wouldn't. It would remain stagnant, and his character, which needs to be dynamic, would remain passive. Always a bad thing. Because I need to develop my prince's character, I want to make this plot development into a choice he has to make. As we build this choice, we need to keep an eye on the character traits to remember to keep our prince consistent. I'm not sure at what point this mini arc happens in the story, but let's say this is the latest and the largest in a series of increasingly brazen and villainous developments that the uncle has masterminded. So by now, let's say, the prince has lost the rose-colored glasses. He's seeing his uncle as less of a noble hero, but he still doesn't realize that he's just a villain who's using him. Nevertheless, his uncle still finds a way to frame this choice to eliminate this powerful, innocent family as something the prince needs to do for his family and his own power. He manipulates the prince into thinking that this family's existence threatens his own family's existence. He's naive, so he buys that. But the idea that the whole family has to be killed doesn't sit well with him. But the uncle says, you know, leave one alive and you create an enemy or whatever. There's also a part of him that knows that his father wouldn't approve of this decision. But he also really wants to protect his father and the rest of his royal family. At this point in his development, that has become a lot more important to him. So in the end, he makes the choice to execute the whole family. He decides in this moment to sacrifice his father's approval in order to save his father's life. This represents evolution that we can use. He's willing to put the lives of his loved ones, and later his people, before his reputation of being loved himself. That will be a seed for his future shift into nobility and righteousness. Even though in this moment he is taking a step away from my ultimate goal for him. But I want his development to be imperfect. I want him to make mistakes, and given the changes I have in mind for him and the high stakes of the story, some of those mistakes will have to be huge. As a person rooting for this character, I don't like that he makes this decision, but it's good for his character development as I've planned it. This mini climax occurs with his choice. His development evolves with his choice. And so we move into the next mini arc. And if you continue like this, making your considerations for the plot's development include keeping an eye on his character's development, you'll be able to find and plan these points where you can use the plot to present him with these fantastically useful choices. Use these to build his arc according to the blueprint you've set out. That should about wrap up our introduction to character arcs. And I do regard this as an introduction. There's a lot of information here and it's pretty dense, but hopefully I was able to explain this clearly. If you have questions about anything I've talked about here today, drop them in the comment section and I'll do my best to answer them. For your homework. Okay. First of all, on the subject of homework, I have set up a system by which I can look at homework if you decide to do the homework. I spent a while trying to figure this out, so we're still in the trial period of this and might theoretically have some kinks to iron out, but for now, here's what I've come up with. I've set up a Patreon. The link is in the description. And while yes, I'll have 1 or 2 tiers and all that fun stuff, I didn't want to build homework into that tier subscription service, mainly because I don't always stick to a perfect once a month schedule with my videos. And also, you might not always want to do the homework. And I'm not your mom, and this isn't 10th grade. So we should keep this as non-high school as humanly possible. So homework is a small one-time purchase, which you can find here. There's no need to be a Patreon subscriber to purchase a round of homework. Also, you can purchase as many rounds as you like, and you can do whichever homework you like, no matter what my current video is. The homework listings on Patreon, for now anyway, and this is part of the experiment, will be each individual homework. So this video's homework is its own item, and the Helen homework from my character creation video is its own item, and so on and so on. With the purchase of 1 round of homework, you will be able to send me your homework. I will look at it and write up my notes on it and send it back. And then you also get this 1 round of follow-up questions. So if you have questions about my notes on your homework, I will answer 1 round of those questions. However, if you have further questions after that, or you want to do the whole exercise all over again, you need to purchase that homework again. You're welcome to do that as often as you want. But looking at homework, making the notes, etc., that does take me some time. I have no idea how long I'll need to turn around your homework. We're going to learn those kinds of details together. So anyway, for the homework, you can use my prince as I started him, his starting point, his initial form, and then decide a different ending point for him. Determine what points in his initial character traits will inform that ending. Write out the broad idea of his development path, and then I want you to choose no fewer than 3 major points where he will make a choice that will be a mini arc's mini climax, and that will also develop his character along the path that you have chosen for him, and write out summaries of those. You should try to do this chronologically. It can be 3 in direct succession, but it can also be 3 at various points in his development. You can do more than 3 for yourself, but I might not have time to look at more than 3. Anyway, I should probably go get more coffee. As always, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.
Hell yeah. Another video down. Alright. Just getting closer and closer to that true image of what we need, right? We'll get there eventually. Alright, well now we can move on to art. Today is lines. Alright. Get your drawing books ready.
My name is Paul Priestley. Welcome to arttutorialsonline.com. Today's video is the second in my series on drawing for beginners. Yes, today we're going to be looking at line. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Well, it is. But line can tell us lots of things about direction, about volume, about shapes. Lots of things. It's exciting. So come on, let's make a start.
Hell yeah.
Now I'm going to draw a single line here with a 4B pencil. It means nothing, it just looks a line. But if I put 2 or 3 lines next to it, you can see it looks like eyes and a nose and a mouth. It isn't, it's just line. If I draw a circle around it, it becomes a face, and we read it as a face. Now look at these 2 vertical lines and 1 horizontal. Another horizontal line means nothing, but if I put a curve next to each one, look, I've written the word face. We read lines. This is what's most important about drawing. Now we can do the same thing with any little sketch. We can read the lines. The lines will tell us lots of things about the individual sketch. So if you look at this, it just looks like a flat shape. But if I start putting lines down the side, and I'm going to put them very close together here and gradually get wider apart and press on slightly less Now, have you noticed it now makes the shape?
I hate drawing
look
faces.
curved.
I'm so
It
bad
looks
at
like
faces.
a cylinder. All because we are reading the lines. The lines are telling us that it's a cylinder.
Alright, I'm not even gonna be close to that, but hey, we can try, right? Yeah, no, that didn't work. But it is what it is.
Works. Now the same thing can apply to other shapes too. For example, imagine I draw a circle here. Not a very good circle, so we'll just draw another little bit in there. You see, I'm not worrying about rubbing it out. I'm going to draw a vertical line down the middle, but look what I'm going to do now. I'm drawing lots and lots of curves. They're gradually getting more and more curved, but going to that 2 points at the end of the original line. Now, can you see? This now looks like a ball shape, simply because I'm drawing curved lines on here. So your brain is reading what is effectively a flat object, but now seeing it as a curve and seeing it
like
as
a
round.
fucking
It's a
onion.
ball
Mine
shape,
looks like a
simply
fucking
because of the
onion.
lines I put on. You see how curved it looks? Now, we can add a little
God.
shadow underneath by simply putting more lines in. You see how we can create a little shadow underneath there? And if you want it to stand on something which gains in shadow, look how I draw the lines. Have you noticed they all radiate out from the 1 point? And because of that, it makes it look as though it's standing on top of a flat surface. Simple. Lines are really important. Now, look at this. Imagine you are drawing a landscape and we are going to draw some hills. Now look at the lines I'm going to draw here. The lines define the shape of the hills. You see that hill now looks as though it's curving down. These lines here, look at those lines. You see how it makes it look as though the
No, it makes it look
landscape is now
like an onion.
curved. Now, if you were painting this, you would follow, your brushstrokes would follow the same line.
Okay, so we got what? This upper line? So we got like,
And that would help to make the whole thing look much more three-dimensional.
yeah, I curved the
Following
lines
is
the wrong way.
Really important. See those lovely curves we're getting? So we can develop this further. Imagine this. I'm going to draw this little shape here. And I'm going to shade it in. But I'm not going to think too much about the line when I shade it in. This is what children often do. They'll just scribble something in. Here, look, you see? I'm shading it in, just putting lines in, almost randomly, scribbling them in like children do. Now, when you look at that, it is very difficult to make any sense of it at all. It doesn't look like anything. But look what happens when I draw the lines in an organised fashion. These lines are all horizontal, which tells us the surface is now flat. These lines are all drawn at an angle, as you can see here, and it now looks as though we've got a flat road possibly going between two areas of land, or it could be a river going through. Do you see the idea? You see the difference? When the lines are organised, we can read the shape much better. So the angle of your lines is really important to your drawing. You must get the angles of the line right. Look at this final little example here. Similar sort of idea, but this time the lines are going to be done differently. Look, single vertical line, but now all the lines are going to radiate out from that single point. And this gives the effect of pointing your eye into the distance. We're going down this road, if that's what it is. You see? We also want to emphasize the distance by doing this. I'm going to put vertical lines in, but the vertical lines are going to get wider as they come towards you, which makes it look as though the angles are receding into the distance. You see the idea? Look how that makes it look as though you're going into the distance. All done with line. Lines are really important, so no scribbling. Organise your lines. If you can organise your lines, your drawing will look wonderful. Good luck with your work. Thank you for watching ArtTutorialsOnline.com. I hope you've enjoyed the video and learnt something about the use of line. If you have, then maybe you could give the video a like.
Hell yeah. Yeah, like these ones are nice and fast, so that's what we got there. I like that onion. Oh yeah, it just needs that like little fur rouge thing, you know, piece at the top there. It's kind of sticking out. All right, what should we draw? Let's do. Okay, let's do. Okay, I know. Jesus. Okay. Is this one or this one? This one. Okay. Okay, here we go. Get this to stop fucking moving. Let's turn the music back on. Alright, here we go. So, we're going to start with the simple shapes, right? Am that high, or is the camera drunk? Camera's definitely drunk. But speaking of which, we need tokes. Let's do tokes. Token. Token up the tokes. Let's go. Are you token? I'm token. We're a token together. It's a token time. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, toke! Keep touching my glasses. Ah! Worst thing is trying to keep myself like in this camera while I'm doing this. Like that's the probably the thing I'm the fucking worst at. Okay, so then we want something like sun coming from like here. I want horizon would be like this, right? Okay. First tree NA, but hey, it is what it is, right? We wanted it to be a little bit difficult. I'm trying to be too neat. I need to be no more aggressively not neat. Does that look like a fucking tree, or does that not look like a fucking tree? It needs to be slightly darker on this. Does that look more like a tree? I feel like the biggest problem is this right here. I mean, it kind of looks like a tree. It's a fucked up tree, I'll tell you that, but, I mean... Does that kind of look like grass, like lining the road? Perspective's all off from like here up, but the main point was seeing if we could do the tree, and boy oh boy, I don't know about that. One funky ass looking tree. I don't know, I think that's the best I'm gonna get. Maybe try and do like some... Because the hardest part is the way it looks on camera versus the way it looks on the page, right? I'm trying to make it look good on camera, so it's noticeable. Seems too much, though. That'd be my thought. It's too much.
A group of gay people asked me for directions, so I told them to go straight.
Tree, oddly, is my favorite part. Yeah, because the tree is the focus of the picture. Everything else was just to see if we could do something like this and keep the perspective, which we clearly can. Okay, so you can see the shades a little bit better on there. So let's see. We'll just go along with that, right? I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's something, right? Well, I think that was you know, a successful failure, you could say, right? We know what we did wrong, the perspective and the angling, but hey, I think, I don't know, we're getting there with the shading, right? Like, my hand is feeling a lot more comfortable with doing what it needs to do. Practice makes perfect. Got you, Tabitha Gaming. Hope you had a great stream. Hell yeah, Cubano. Thank you, good sir. I don't think there's much else I can do with it. I mean, a little bit on the trees, right? Like, I can deal with that. That's pretty decent for today. We gotta finish the rest of the stories anyways. Here. Over the list. Right. Okay. This one. This one. This is oh. What was I? Puffed in cigarette. We need to thoughts of missing work, but the pain's so bad. That's where we're at. We need a granola bar real quick here, and then we'll have a toke, and then we'll get back to it. Hungry. Hunger. Striking deep. This one seems to be destroyed. Everything's back to reading. Going all over the place here. Okay, tokes! Get your tokes ready! Let's go. Three, two, one, toke! And that's a very specific word to use here, because wounds is preempting what the doctor's going to say, which is, hey, did you do this to yourself? 'Cause this looks like you took wires and shoved them into your skin. Not gonna lie, that's kind of what it looks like. Are you guys old enough to remember, like, hospital places and, like, clinics and stuff like that that had, you know, like, ashtrays built into the things? Like, on the edges of the seat benches, so you could just sit there and smoke cigarettes and not have to worry. Oh, the days of carefreeness. I remember them mostly on the SkyTrain in, like, Vancouver. Shit like that. Those little, like, metal things with a little lip top on them that you could, like, close and they shuffle through the bottom when you close them. It's like the bigger system. Crazy world! The normalities, right? Drinking at work and smoking cigarettes all day long. The standards of life have lowered. We've lost our freedoms, man. We've completely lost our ability to completely just kill ourselves. Unbeknownst, without, you know... Government said it's good! Yeah, because they want to make money. Well, there's no one left to make money off us. Well, fuck. Sometimes you take it too far, right? Okay, sure, pressed on the wounds. You remove the cigarette, extinguishing it on the ashtray, attached to the chat on, proceeded. Follow the receptionist to inside. Simple wooden chair. I don't know what to call it. What the hell is that? Like the doctor's bed kind of thing, right? It's like the thing you lay down on. I don't know what the fuck to call it. This is actually like a hint because the doctor knows that he's going to be coming in and the doctor knows that he's going to be harvesting it. So he purposely left the light on because it's the first thing he's going to do is like, okay, take your shirt off and lie down on the table and we'll inspect this shit, right? It's like it's almost too abrupt. Like the doctor knows exactly the procedure to go through with this, right? And then the doctor starts telling about Morgellons disease. And that's where it starts to bring into your mind, oh, the idea that you use the word wounds. And maybe this is self-inflicted and it's just, you know, him. And then it ends with the doctor being like, ah, more samples, yes, good. Okay, you can go home now, get out of here. Come back next week, kind of idea. So it's like, you know there's something ominous going on in the background, but you can't really place it. calls in. Flat in the chair. Blowing his thumbs. That's another cigarette. Back. Far from seat back. Possible is to not accidentally lean back. Press on fibers. Quid? Okay. What are we at word count wise? Shit, we're already at 412. I mean, we can get rid of some of the stuff at the beginning, right? We just gotta make sure that we get the story down first, because we only have really and truly a maximum of 350-ish words. The doctor entered the room. Don't even looking at Ken told him to remove shirt. Inspect. On the whatever you call it, bed. Removing its shirt and explain to the doctor about condition. What's started by bad has gotten. Nodded. Scratched down his notes. Interrupted me. Moved the light across my back. Where do you work? A computer repair shop. Repairing wires and cords. Dealing with new insulation. Absentee nodding. For adjusting the light closer. And he spoke again. Do you have shots often. Why he would ask that, but responded. Simple. Oh, life's good. You may not want to hear this, but these are self-inflicted or otherwise third-party inflicted. Someone do this to you, or did you do this to yourself? Tell there was no answer that would be worthy. No, there would be no answer that would be correct in this situation. Accusation clearly hanging in the air. At this point, I'm like, I might have to just remove the entirety of the beginning of it in order to make it fit. And just have him entering into the doctor's office instead of him sitting at the receptionist's desk. Right? Have everything that happened at the receptionist's desk happen inside after he's already been called and he's just waiting for the doctor. And the doctor comes in, he puts out the cigarette, and everything starts. So it's like 50 words instead of 400 words before the the examination even begins. No, doctor. An eye on me since they were only small specks that I assumed were normal ingrown hairs. Ken flinched in pain. The doctor probed the wires, cotton swab. Oh, it has fresh blood around it. Did you pick at it? Scratched it, and then I basically passed out. Pain. Been 3 days and it just kept getting worse. So I came here to see what could be done. Doctor walked over to a cupboard and grabbed something. Heard of Morgellons disease. Ken stated he hadn't. continued. It is a rare case of what's it called? Something. I can't remember. Psychosomatic, that's the word. Psychosomatic. Injury usually manifesting around sticky wires into your skin. Here, as though there's something wrong with you. There's a profound expression of hypochondria. Insist that you kept under watch. I feel like this is just this thing is getting way too out of hand, you know? One of the biggest problems I have is like things just get way too out of hand. I'm like, how do I not have this conversation go so ridiculously long? You know what, I'm not even gonna mention it. You know what, I'm just gonna keep it. And we'll just see what happens, you know, during the editing phase. We can cut it out if we need to, but explaining Morgellons is kind of important to the story. Set up, but docking please. Upper back where there were no growths. This might be difficult to understand. The best. Mine can play tricks on you. Doctor sprayed a numbing agent. Ken's shoulders and back. Tweezers. I don't know how to spell. A pair of tweeters, and after a few moments began to draw the wires. Ken didn't flinch. Yeah, I want to begin the harvest. No. Extraction. Now, if you feel any pain. And practiced. Move the wires. Dab the skin. Coagulated. Oh, it is a C, of course. Coagulated. Reverently held. Thin red wires. Open the biohazard bag. Placed them inside. Another cupboard. Filled with similar bags with similar wires inside of them. Turn back to Ken. Blank face stating that he is going to do this again. It would be best to return to this exact office and see relieved to have the hairs removed. Pressed lightly on those open wounds. Flinched slightly with the numbing effect. So, it's nowhere near what it used to be. Mild sore now. Right. Doctor. Left the office. So, how can I prove to this guy that I do this and these growths are real? Decided he had one. pictures as proof. There is something more than just his mind playing tricks on him. And somehow we wound up with 1,000 words, because I'm just bad at this. So we do the only thing we can do. This story condensed into 400 words. Think you can do that for me? While you're at it, give it a mental edit. Keep everything steady as far as pacing flow goes. Focus is the removal of the wires from the can and to show that the doctor knows more than he is saying. Good luck. Here's the story. So let's see. So the basic elements down. Let's see where it went from there. 487 words. Still a lot. So let's see if we can get rid of some more. So this is the hook at the beginning, right? Ken Grimace lifting his button-up plaid shirt higher off his shoulders. Strange growth. It started as mild soreness a month ago, mistaken for ingrown hairs. Now they pierced his skin, lengthening daily and amplifying the agony into his bones. Kenneth Surgard, receptionist announced. Relief surged as he stood, wobbling from a head rush. Extinguishing his cigarette, he followed her to an exam room. Wooden chair, padded table, and an overhead light, left on from the previous patient. He sat carefully, avoiding pressure on his back. Dr. Schmore entered without a glance. Remove your shirt for inspection? Ken complied, lying on the table, explaining the onset and worsening pain. Doctor nodded absently, jotting notes, then maneuvered the light over Ken's shoulder. Where do you work, Ken? Computer repair shop. Wires, cords, insulation. Doctor adjusted the light. Negative thoughts often? Oh, life's good. Why? You don't want to hear this, but these are self-inflicted. Ken tensed. No, doctor. They started as specks. I thought ingrown hairs. Scratched once and nearly passed out. Dried blood. Dried blood gleamed as the doctor probed with the slab. Picking at it? 3 days ago. It's worse now. Pressed it through the skin by prodding it. With a thorn growing from the inside. Schmore fetch supplies. Heard of more Jellins. Psychomatic self-injury, like inserting wires to feign illness. A profound hypochondria. Ken started to sit up, but the doctor pressed him down gently. The mind plays tricks. He sprayed a numbing agent, then used tweezers methodically. No pain. Extraction begins. Tell me if it hurts. Practiced precision, plucked the wires, dabbing blood as it coagulated. Reverently, he held the red and blue strands, sealing them in a biohazard bag. Opening a cupboard, revealed dozens of similar bags filled with identical wires. His face blank, he turned. If this happens again, return here immediately. See me. Ken tested the wounds. Mild soreness now, the numbing fading. Relief washed over him. Thanked the doctor and left, pondering how to prove the growths were real, not tricks of the mind. He'd document them next time. Photos, timelines. The doctor's cupboard lingered in his thoughts. How many others? What did he truly know? He's not supposed to have seen it, so... I don't know how to end it, though. I think I should just end it with the extraction begins. And then sealing them, and then it's just the bags. Opening the cupboard revealed dozens of similar bags filled with identical wires. And that's just the end. Bum bum bum. The question is, can I get it down to 2 minutes and 30 seconds in a read time? I'm just gonna get rid of this. Pain clouded his focus, wobbling from a head rush. Just gonna, because the whole point of the cigarette is to point at like the date, right? Like it's still at a point in time when you can smoke a cigarette. So I think I kind of need that. As he ashed his cigarette. And the tray attached to the chairs. Sat in the doctor's office. Or an exam room. Sat in an exam room. A wooden chair with a wooden metal chair. So maybe he grimaced as he ashed his cigarette in the tray attached to the chair's arm. Padded table and an overhead light. With an overhead light wound across the small room. Which had caused his shirt collar to rub against his shoulders. He was not looking forward to this extraction. Padded table with an overhead light loomed across the small room. Lifting his bucknut plaid shirt higher off his shoulders, touching a strange growth. Growth that started as mild soreness a month ago. Thought of them simple ingrown hairs. Now they pierced his skin, lengthening daily and amplifying the agony into his bones. Lengthening daily and amplifying the agony so it seeped into his bones. He needed this fixed to return to work before his boss noticed. Pain clouded his focus, wobbling from a head rush. Last exhale of his cigarette. He sat carefully, avoiding pressure on his back. I don't think I need that either. Just Dr. Schmore entered without a glance. Remove your shirt for inspection. Ken complied, lying on the table, explaining the onset and worsening pain. Doctor nodded absently, jotting notes, then maneuvering the light over Ken's shoulders. Okay, I think this actually works now. Hold on. He grimaced as he ashed, clog, shirt color, extraction, and casual smell of tobacco. I'm like, is it too much to have the doctor smoking? Or should it just be that tiniest little hint? It's like, how the hell are you smoking inside? Especially in a doctor's office. Well, you used to be able to do that. So it's like one exhale of his cigarette, so he breathes out. Dr. Schmore enters without a glance. Lighting his own cigarette. Speaking before he turned to face Ken. Remove your shirt for inspection. Ken complied, lying on the table, explaining the onset and worsening pain. Doctor nodded absently, jotting notes, then maneuvering the light over Ken's shoulder. Exhaled smoke. Ashed his half cigarette. While putting on rubber gloves. Something off the countertop. Where do you work, Ken? Computer repair. I work with wires, cords, and insulation. Doctor adjusted the light. Does that give you negative thoughts often? No, life's good. Why? You may not want to hear this, but these are self-inflicted. Ken tensed. No, doctor, they started as specks. I thought ingrown hairs. I scratched once and nearly passed out. Dried blood gleamed as the doctor probed with a swab. Picked at it. 3 days ago, I pressed it through the skin by prodding it. It was a thorn growing from the inside. Dr. Schmore fetched supplies. Heard of more gellins? Psychosomatic self-injury, like inserting wires to feign illness. Profound hypochondria. Ken started to sit up, but the doctor pressed him back down. Sit up in protest. The mind plays tricks. Sprayed numbing agent. Then used tweezers methodically. No pain. Moving fibers. No pain. Ken didn't flinch. Extraction begins. Tell me if it hurts. Practiced precision. He plucked the wires, dabbing blood as it coagulated. Reverently, he held the red and blue strands, his hands sealing them in a biohazard bag. Opening a cupboard revealed dozens of similar bags filled with identical wires. 440 words. I think we can do it. I'm just gonna see if there's gonna be maybe one more thing we can like remove here. These appear self-inflicted. It's the plausible deniability bit. It says the read time is 1 minute and 45 seconds, but it's kind of slow with the voice too. So maybe we can do it. Let's find out.